my name is Sean, and I'm going to be talking about Dr. Ramachandran's Chapter 3, an issue that comes up in Chapter 3 in Phantoms in the Brain. So one of the big topics that's been addressed so far in Chapters 2 and then again in Chapter 3 is the whole idea of phantom pain. And in Chapter 3, he kind of says this idea that he has that pain is actually an illusion in your brain. In fact, on page 54, he states that pain is an opinion of an organism's state of health rather than a mere reflexive response to an injury. So I thought that this was a really fascinating idea since pain to this day is still so poorly understood in our society. And I just wanted to give you guys a little bit better idea of the kind of actually pain management epidemic that's going on right now. It was reported by the CDC's National Center of Health Statistics that prescription painkillers were the leading cause of accidental deaths in the U.S. in 2012. And between 1998 and 2008, the number of deaths due to painkiller overdose quadrupled. So in 2008, nearly 15,000 people died from overdoses to painkillers. So I know that this is something that affects a lot of people. I also read a statistic somewhere that a third of Americans suffer from chronic pain. So it's a big issue. It's going to definitely benefit us to try to kind of come up with the underpinnings for where this pain is experienced, whether it's a somatic experience or whether it's something in the brain. So we come back to this idea of pain as an illusion, and that's kind of the idea that Dr. Ramachandran presents. And I wanted to let you guys know that it's actually not a completely new idea, although it has changed in recent years. Pain as an illusion has been around for a while. In fact, in the 1970s, there was an obstetrician in England who his name was Grantley Dick Reed, and he claimed that childbirth, which many people know to be one of the greatest pains that can be experienced, that it was actually all in women's minds, and it was a completely psychological experience. So that didn't make him very popular. But it is an idea that people have been trying to tease apart for many years and figure out exactly where does pain lie and how can we best address these issues of pain and phantom pains. So I was really interested in Dr. Ramachandran's placebo effect idea. I know he only talked about one patient in which he tried that placebo battery pack, but I have been reading articles and seeing that they say that pain is affected by a lot of different things, like your perceptions of how you are going to experience pain, or perhaps confidence even going into a painful experience. So I want to do a little bit more research around that. And I decided to focus kind of on acupuncture because acupuncture is one of these treatments that I think for a lot of years people have thought is a placebo effect. And I know that if you guys know anything about placebo effects, there is a lot of studies that have been done about, placebo effects can have positive outcomes. But is it simply a placebo effect, or is there something different going on with acupuncture treatment when we're talking about pain relief? So I'm going to talk to you guys about a study that was done at Mass General Hospital. Before I go into that, I wanted to let you guys know that there's this word that I'm going to be using, and it's analgesic, or analgesic, or analgesia. And analgesia is it's like lack of pain sensitivity. So, and it's oftentimes when we're talking about analgesia, we're talking about when somebody is not under anesthesia. So they're conscious and yet they are not experiencing the pain. And that condition where people are born and actually cannot experience pain because their nociceptors are a little bit off, that's called congenital analgesia. But when we're talking about this study in acupuncture, we're going to be talking about acupuncture-induced analgesia, or they also have hypnosis-induced analgesia. So for this study, I drew a little bit of a diagram. There were 4 different parts, and my stick figures hopefully represent some of the people in the study. Obviously, it was more than 4 people. First of all, though, there were people in this study. There were 4 groups. The first group was people who received real acupuncture, electrical stimulation, in conjunction with a painful stimuli. And so they were doing a thermal stimuli. So that was the first group. So real acupuncture and the painful stimuli. And so that was these 2 people, real acupuncture. 3 and 4 actually got something that we call a sham. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this right side across or it's going to be backwards, but we'll see. So the sham was people who were receiving placebo acupuncture. So they would insert a needle, but they didn't administer the electrical shock. So the first ones did get the shock, the second ones didn't. And then within these groups, there were people who had high expectations for what acupuncture could do for them and how they were going to feel. And then there were people who were a little bit more skeptical and didn't have those same expectations. So which in each group, you had high expectations and low expectations, high and low. Okay, so the outcomes for the study were actually really fascinating. It came out that in terms of behavioral efficacy and the effect that the real acupuncture versus the sham had on patients was insignificant. So that's to say that there was significant pain reduction reported by the test subjects for both people who did receive pain or did receive acupuncture and those who didn't receive acupuncture, which suggests that this idea of perception of how much it's going to help you really does affect your perception of pain that you have of yourself. And I think that that's the whole thing I was talking about with the placebo effect. Like, people know that it is oftentimes having an effect on people's experience of pain. One thing, though, that I found really interesting in this study is they did an fMRI brain study along with it to see the different regions of the brain that were being activated, and found that it was different regions. So for people that were actually receiving the acupuncture, there was a decrease in in activity in certain brain regions. And then for people who it was the more placebo effect because they weren't actually receiving the acupuncture, it was a decrease in activity in other brain regions, and it was more like the frontal lobe brain regions. So that's to say that acupuncture is having a different effect than just expectation about the pain that you're going to receive. And yet in the end, the subjects from both sides of the study recorded decrease in amounts of pain. So I'm not really sure exactly where that leaves us. I know that when we're talking about pain, we do want to be very aware of people's perceptions of pain. Whether pain is an illusion or not seems a little bit, I mean, it's an interesting question, but it's not invalidating the pain that people are experiencing, because pain is a perception, you know? So, but it's definitely interesting to know that different brain regions are being activated in these two different areas. The one question that I had about my study is why the network in terms of high expectation was not being activated in addition to the one that was activated for the people who were actually receiving acupuncture. So why these were kind of competing, and it seems, brain regions. And also I'm wondering why Dr. Ramachandran didn't talk more about the placebo effect, because he talks a lot about how the visual stimulus was able to override that painful experience with the phantom limb, and that's why he uses the mirror box. But I wonder why he only gave that one example of the placebo effect not working, when we see in several studies like this that it can have an effect on people's perceptions of pain. So those are questions that I still have, and hope you guys can think about some of those things, and we'll talk more about it in class. Thanks. Bye.